Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. What if the scariest thing in a haunted house movie wasn't the ghosts, but the reality of watching someone that you love slowly fade away? Good Boy isn't your typical horror flick. It's an indie gem that blends supernatural chills with the raw heartbreak of illness told through the eyes of man's best friend. Today we're diving into why this film packs such an emotional punch, how its filmmaking elevates the genre, and why Indy the dog might be this year's breakout star. By the end of it, you're gonna know why Good Boy isn't just a horror story, it's a love letter to dogs, to loss, and to the quiet kind of courage that stays with you long after the credits roll. Let's get to it. Good Boy is directed by Ben Leonberg and released by IFC and Shudder. The movie opens with Indy and his owner Todd, and they're in their apartment. Indy has already started to sense that there are dark figures encroaching on his space. His owner Todd has collapsed and is bleeding from the mouth, and right away from the very beginning of the story, we establish that illness is the true antagonist in this movie. Todd is rushed to the emergency room with the help of his sister, and because he's so ill, he decides to move to the woods into his grandpa's old run-down house, and he takes Indy with him. I really like how they kind of mirror what many people believe dogs do. They go and try to find solitude when they're close to the end of their life. The mirror and the parallel that we're creating here is that Todd senses that his life is coming to an end soon as well and decides to go and find solitude in the woods, trying to enjoy the last few moments of his life with his best friend Indy. After the initial setup, we see that Todd and Indy are exploring their new house. They're exploring all the different parts of Grandpa's old house. And all while this is happening, we slowly start to peel the layers and realize that this is a haunted house story. Indy, the movie is shown exclusively from his point of view, and he starts to hear creaks and he starts to see shadows. He even starts to have nightmares, all while Todd continues to grow weaker and unfortunately starts to grow angrier because of his illness. One of the best sequences of the movie is when Todd and Indy are kind of exploring the woods around the house. They run into one of the neighbors, and the neighbor recognizes Todd from when he was a kid. The neighbor warns Todd that there are traps in the woods that he has set, but he also loans him a generator, which is a really kind thing for him to do. But the point of this whole section of the movie is to really add tension and isolation, really proving that Todd and Indy are really all alone, and there is not a lot of help that's going to be available to them outside of their own house. Now, in this section of the movie, it really starts to build the dread and the tension within the house that they are in. Indy continues to see visions, continues to have nightmares, and he is continuing to see his owner, Todd, slowly waste away. Todd does try to seek medical intervention by applying to be in a medical trial, but he is rejected. So ultimately, his fate has been sealed. He has no other options, and unfortunately, he's going to be left in that house, continuing to slowly deteriorate in front of his friend, Indy. The climax of the movie is an emotional roller coaster. Indy fights off a shadowy mud monster that is trying to attack him and Todd, but ultimately Todd finally dies in his sleep, and it's a bittersweet moment. Todd's spirit even is able to reach out to Indy and tell him in one of the most emotional parts of the movie that you're a good dog, but you can't save me. I know a lot of people online have been asking if Indy dies in the movie, and I'm happy to report that he does not. He does get stranded in the basement. It's a very powerful scene where he's trying to save Todd's soul from being taken away, but he ultimately cannot. Todd's sister rescues Indy from the basement, and at this point in the movie, the themes really start to coalesce and come together. It's about survival and ultimately heartbreak here at the end of the movie. I think the film is a metaphor for loss and love. The nightmares that Indy has and the visions he senses are not actual spirits or malevolent entities. It's death, cold and simple, creeping closer to Todd, and Indy can sense all of it. So as I watched the movie and continued to analyze it, a couple of things stood out to me. This is really indie filmmaking done with a clear passion and a clear purpose and with a lot of love. It does have a short runtime, which means that there are no wasted beats. Everything is tight, everything is meaningful, and from the first frame of the movie until the last, it's a real emotional journey. One of the strongest parts of the movie is how the director blends horror with heart. It really is a heartfelt love story between the pet and his owner, and it's a very unique angle for the genre, something that I haven't seen before. I think they did an excellent job balancing the two, and it was an emotional ride from the very first frame until the last moment of the movie. One of the best parts is that I believe the story works as much as a metaphor for terminal illness as it does as a ghost story. If you come out of the movie believing that the house in the woods was haunted and that the same evil spirits that killed Todd's grandpa finally took him too at the end, then the story works on that level completely. Even the end is ambiguous because Indy literally pulls Todd's spirit from an underground cave in the basement of the house. But to me, I read it more as metaphor, and how the emotional connection a pet makes to their owner is no less real and tangible as with humans. That's the beauty. The story is told from Indy's perspective, but imaginatively, we also see into his heart and to his mind and see the emotional turmoil that he is having to cope with Todd's death. The acting was great from everybody involved. I really appreciated how the human performances were really minimal, and the powerhouse emoting came from Indy the dog himself. I think the ending lands completely because it connects to real human horror, which is the thought of having to lose a loved one. Having to see this take place through the eyes of a dog is something we haven't seen in the horror genre before, but it is done beautifully and effectively in the movie. Now, if we explore some of the themes in the movie, obviously the first one that comes to mind for me is the unconditional love that dogs have as a companion. You call them part of your family, and it's absolutely true in this movie, and it really leans heavily into that common knowledge that most of us have, and the reason why dogs are such a huge part of everybody's life is because of the unconditional love that they show as members of our family. One of the most powerful themes in the movie is the idea of letting go. It really is heartbreaking to see that Indy has the realization that he can't save Todd. He tries and he sees his owner slowly dying and slowly deteriorating, but he can't do anything except be a loving companion, which is exactly what Todd needed at this stage in his life. One of the things that I think is going to cause the most conversations after watching the movie is the ambiguity. Is the haunting real, or is the illness manifesting as dread? I tend to fall on the side of the metaphor, but there is an argument to be made that the haunting is real and that these spirits and entities are actually attacking Todd, whether it's a curse or some sort of family curse that's passed from generation to generation. There is a case to be made about that as well, and Indy is actually seeing these entities. He's actually seeing these spirits attack, and if you fall on that side of the argument, a good case can be made that that's exactly what we're watching within the movie, although I tend to end on the metaphor side of the argument. Moving on to talking a little bit about the cinematography, I loved the color grading. I thought that the constant damp and rainy aesthetic really built an oppressive mood that kind of lingers and just kind of stains the overall aesthetic within the movie, and it really does build an oppressive mood. As a true film nerd myself, I have to say that my favorite part of the movie, believe it or not, was the sound design. I think it stands out as one of the best sound designs I've heard in recent horror movies. The creaks, the wind, the subtle dread that's woven in through sound and music within the movie is excellent. It takes on a life of its own. The visuals are so sharp, the aesthetic is so oppressive, but none of that would really come together in a meaningful way if not for the sound design. And to me, as a film nerd, as a movie nerd, as a production nerd, to me the sound design was by far the best part of the entire movie. One of the things you might read online is how the movie is told exclusively from Indy's point of view. And we really do mean his point of view. There are some first-person POV shots that are shot from his point of view. But more than anything else, it's shot from a low angle, looking up and around at different parts of the house. And in one of the most brilliant directing choices within the movie itself, all of the humans are either blurred out, framed out, and you don't physically see their face or their features until the very last shot of the movie. It is one of the most brilliant things that I've seen a director do, and it really does highlight the movie being shown from Indy's perspective. One of the coolest things about the movie being released in theaters is that after the credits roll, there's a behind the scenes clip where the director shows how they pulled off the movie. They showed how they were getting Indy to act. They showed how they were getting him to move from point A to point B. In general, how they pulled off the movie, which is a really great little neat thing that they added at the end and definitely worth checking out. One of the coolest parts about the behind the scenes clip after the credits roll at the end of the movie is that the director talks a little bit about how they used Eisenstein's Kuleshov effect to get Indy to emote his emotions so effectively. Essentially, that effect is using juxtaposing images to make an audience feel a certain way. It's done brilliantly, and the explanation is actually quite interesting. It's kind of like pulling the curtain back and showing you how the movie magic was essentially pulled off. Now, according to the director Ben Leonberg, the shooting lasted over 400 days over the course of 3 years. It was a passion project between him and his wife. Indy is actually the director's dog, so they were able to shoot for maybe 3 hours a day over the course of many days, over the course of many years, to finally come up with the movie. And so what you see on the screen is many years worth of passion displayed on screen for you. So finally, I give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. I think it is an Indy darling. I think its heartfelt, emotional connection that you have in the movie makes it one of the most unique horror movies I have ever seen, and definitely something I suggest everybody check out in theaters or as soon as it hits the streaming, because this is something you're gonna wanna be able to watch again and again. I think the target audience is best for animal lovers, which hopefully includes very many of us, right? But also if you're a fan of indie horror, or for anyone who's looking for a horror movie with an emotional punch. It's not gory, it's not terrifying, it's just a solid, scary movie, but the most important part to me is that it has heart. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching and sticking around until the end of the video. Make sure to comment below if you're gonna go out and see the movie, or if you have any comments you have that you'd like to share about your viewing experience. I'd love to get those conversations started. This is definitely a movie that I suggest people head out into the theaters to see. It's a very unique experience. You could support independent filmmaking, but not only that, you get to see an amazing performance from a dog, and it's just a fun overall movie, all things considered. Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Ben with Out of Frame, and we'll see you back here in the next one.